What is up, you guys, and welcome back to my page. What is up, you guys? We are back with another book review. And this week's book is one that has been most awaited by me. A.C.O.M.A.F and Fury. I have been waiting to review this book. I have many thoughts, many tangents, and as you can see, almost every page is dog-folded. Not only that, almost every other page is practically highlighted. I try to keep it down to what I thought was the most important points. And just like always, there will be no spoilers until about midway through this video, and I will let you know when we're about to go into spoilers. Which really, there won't be many spoilers to begin with if you've read A Court of Thorns and Roses, which brings you to A Court of Mist and Fury. Otherwise, there's no point in reading this book if you haven't read the first book. So minor spoilers, but no major spoilers. So this book picks up around right after Feyre is turned into a Fae. Her and Tam are living in the spring court, living their best life. Feyre's been painting, Feyre's been trying to walk the gardens, but she's still not feeling quite like herself since everything. She's having nightmares. Tamlin's also having nightmares, and they're both having to deal with that. It puts a heavy strain on their relationship. At the same time, we have another character that has been introduced, A.C.O.M.A.F. She's this advisor of some sorts, and she has this weird thing going on with our little fox boy, our little fox friend. And Feyre has also developed some sort of friendship relationship with A.C.O.M.A.F. as well. And even though she's being catered to, she's bored. Tamlin will not let her off the spring court grounds. He's terrified to let her off the grounds. He goes out every single day and doesn't come home till time to eat and time to go to sleep. Even though they do get time together, they're not really getting time together. And the first few chapters are just that. It all has to turn and finally come to a head at some point. And when it does, Feyre's experiencing the backlash. I don't want to say backlash. It depends on how you look at it. It's either a positive backlash or not a terrible but not a great backlash to being saved by all the high fae of all the courts with a drop of their magic inside her that brought her back to life. So part of these consequences are she now has magical powers, ones that protect her and save her from certain someone's wrath. And all while trying to deal with the nightmares, all while trying to deal with Tamlin, her relationship, they're getting ready and preparing for her and Tamlin's wedding. They confess their love to each other in book 1, and now they're getting married. And all the while, Feyre's going, if I can just get through this wedding, if I can just get through this wedding, if I can just get through this wedding. Which brings me to our boy Rhysand, showing up at the most inopportune times. Or does he? And that sparks the literal rest of the plot of the book. Some that are obvious and some plots that are not obvious. So if you enjoyed the first book, if you really enjoyed ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and you enjoyed Feyre and Tamlin's developing relationship, you enjoyed what happened at the end, and you want to know what happens more, you need to read A Court of Mist and Fury. It goes in depth on her and Tamlin's relationship. It goes in depth towards the wedding, and how there might be some mistrust with our new character, A.C.O.M.A.F. And, of course, the most asked question, is there spice in this book? Yes. And I want to say that it's minimal, but compared to the first book where there was like almost no spice whatsoever, not even a hint of like kissing, there is most definitely spice in this book. I'm not going to say it's dark romantic spicy, but it is definitely spicier than the first book. So if you want to find out what happens to Tamlin, Rhysand, and Feyre, if you want to learn what happens to Foxboy, and if you want to learn what happens to the Surreal, and maybe even meeting other high fae lords, then you need to read this book. Because honestly, I thought the plot was really interesting. It wasn't just a plot of Feyre coming back to Feyre to learn how to be Feyre again, because at this point she's Feyre, but she can never be the same again. She's not the same Feyre that we fell in love with the first book. There is major character growth in this book, major character destruction in this book, a pretty decent amount of spice, jealousy in this book, and if you want to meet the Surreal again, you need to read this book. I thought the character developments were good. I thought the plot was pretty good, because we're getting multiple plot lines. There's a major plot line, but then there's there's so many subterranean plot lines that follow through from the first book to this book that are going to follow into the rest of the books, or what I'm thinking is in this book. So go get your copy now, go get your Kindle version now, and really enjoy reading this book. I saved it for a winter reading vlog because a lot of this was based in colder weather to begin with, but I'm still thinking about it to this day, and I may have already gotten the next book in the series, which will be coming up probably sometime in the spring. And just overall, it's not the best book that I've ever read. It's not the worst book that I've ever read. I personally think it's a pretty decent book, and I'm a sucker for a good love story. I'm a sucker for a love story. You gotta read it. And now we are moving on to spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. All of the spoilers. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick up right after Rhysand shows up at Feyre and Tam's wedding. Because at first you're thinking, he is the worst asshole on the planet. How could you ruin her wedding? But if you know Feyre, her despair, she's begging anybody to come rescue her. And who all but hears her? Rhysand! So while playing the part of the asshole, he comes to Feyre's rescue. And is she appreciative? Way, way, way deep down. Way deep down. On the outside, she throws her shoes at him. And you know what? I don't even judge her for it. Go Feyre. But like I said in the non-spoiler section, this literally kickstarts the rest of the book plot. So Rhysand is making good on his deal. He's teaching Feyre how to read. She becomes a pro at this pretty soon, I would argue, for someone who can hardly read and hardly write. Next, you have Rhysand teaching her how to put up her mental shield so that he cannot infiltrate her mind anymore. And like that, she becomes a pro that it irritates him to his core. And in between that time, the shields are up. Rhysand has no idea what's going on, even through the bond where they made their deal. There's only one point in time where he's able to feel her, and it's when Tamlin loses his shit. Feyre's been asking to go out, asking to leave the Spring Court grounds. She's literally bored to tears. She is trying to get through this. She is trying to stay with Tamlin. She's trying to support Tamlin. And yes, everybody deals with trauma and grief differently. I will get back to that point. So I'm just now realizing that I never actually get back to this point, and I'm so sorry. So the point I'm trying to make right here is that, yes, everybody handles trauma differently. There is no one size fits all right here. But Rhysand, not to compare traumas because you should never compare your trauma to somebody else's, but Rhysand went through 50 years of being Anne Marantha's lapdog. 50 years of making her think that he wanted to be her lapdog. Tampon had a way out. He had a way out. And yes, while he has experienced traumatic things, has seen friends die, and went through what he went through under the mountain, I would argue everybody who was under that mountain longer than he was is a little bit more traumatized than he is. So for him to explode on Feyre is not unjustified, it's just uncalled for. And remember, we're seeing this story through Feyre's eyes. So she doesn't want to vilify him, and I'm not trying to vilify Tamlin because he's responding how he is responding to his own personal trauma. And I think that also makes this book a little bit more dynamic because we are seeing how everybody is handling trauma differently. Feyre closes herself off, becomes quiet. Rhysand refuses that, does not allow her to do so, and treats her with the utmost respect while still being an a-hole. And I would argue that he even expresses his trauma, not in Velaris, but the other part of his court. He's an a-hole, and he portrays himself as such. I think that's his outlet in comparison to Tamlin's. Thank you for listening. Let's get back to our scheduled viewing. Thank you. But Tamlin didn't deal well. Moving on. I don't want to give away every detail. A little bit of time passes, events happen in between now and then that you have to read to find out. I'm not going to give you all the details. I would love to. I'm actually really bad about giving everybody every detail on everything I've ever read or seen. You guys count yourselves lucky. But Feyre is finally introduced to Mor, Azriel, Cassian, and Armin. Armin being my favorite one. I love Mor, I love Azriel, and I love Cassian. But something about Amren just really gets me going. I love her character. And as more time progresses, Feyre and Rhysand's relationship is developing. And at some point, there's been something so destructive that happens in the Spring Court, Feyre feels uncompelled to go back. And without question, Rhysand offers her a place to stay here in his court in Velaris, where she is safe. She can do what she pleases. She doesn't even have to speak to him. And after a while, Her nightmares start to diminish. I'm not saying that they go away completely. That is something that carries throughout most of the book. Feyre gets back into being some sort of a version of Feyre again. She doesn't necessarily paint just yet. That takes a good plot through the book as well. And in between this time, Feyre is learning more and more about the Night Court and who Rhysand, Asriel, Cassian, and Amren have to show their face as in comparison to who they are behind closed doors. She learns how to fight, she still practices her reading and writing, and she's dealing with her struggles. She's able to talk to not just Rhysand. Rhysand is not her only friend here in this story. She's able to confide in more. Sometimes she's confiding in Asriel and Cassian, and they have really great advice for her. One friend that seems uncanny is Amren. I love her and Amren's relationship. And Amren is one of those friends that will keep everybody else in check. They all kind of keep each other in check, but Amren really keeps everybody in check. I have to make sure that I'm sticking to my notes. I wrote my notes down so that I don't go way too off track and tell you guys too much of everything. And all while this is going on, all this is happening in the background, Feyre is learning how to use her magic. I'm not going to explain how, but part of their mission to success, they end up having to go to a different court. And in this time, Feyre even tells the High Lord of this court that she could see herself easily falling in love with him. Such a cute little plot. But as they're trying to win over this lord and trying to find his assets, so to speak, that they need for their own gain to help them win this war, Feyre's been practicing her magic this entire time. Even without being in front of Rhysand, Asriel, or Cassian, Feyre's been practicing. We do get a few good glimpses. I wish we honestly got more. We get a few good glimpses of Feyre being able to use her magic, and it's actually really cool. After they come back from the other lord's court, I can't remember if this is before or after, but Feyre gets to visit her sisters, and her sisters do not have the best reaction to who she's become. And I have so many issues also with this because we're supposed to believe that Nesta is the worst sister, but I would also agree that we're shown also a not really nice side of Elaine. They want to say that Elaine is the pure one. Elaine is so precious. She's so tender. She must be protected. Her emotions must be protected. When in reality, she's been babied this entire time, and she is literally engaged, wearing iron, marrying a man, engaged to a man that vows to kill all of the Fae. And they both know, Nesta and Elaine know, that Feyre has turned into a Fae. So no, Elaine to me is not this almighty great character. She too also has her issues. So I don't think that Feyre is the most reliable narrator. She's a good narrator, but I'm not going to say that she's the most reliable. Remember, all this is through her eyes and through her thoughts and her point of view and how she grew up with her sisters. Even though that you're on Feyre's side, you want her to love Elaine, you just know that none of these characters are as good or as bad as they seem to be, which is another topic that I want to hit on towards the end. But remember this thought, that Feyre, even though we're seeing good things happen from the Night Court, it's still all through an unreliable narrator's point of view. Keep that in mind. We will circle back to that towards the end of this video. And then my favorite little arc is when they all go to the center of the Night Court. Feyre pleads to go. Rhysand does not want her to go, but he's not going to tell her no. He just explains to her that he has to be a different person. They all have to be a different person. And Feyre gets to watch everybody, even herself, play this part. And this is where we do get a very good amount of spice, which will later lead into a more decent amount of spice. So we have to wait a few chapters. I'm talking chapter 42, mid chapter 42. So here's chapter 42, and here is the page where all the spice happens. So it takes us a little longer than I would like, but then after that, there is a lot of flirtation, a lot of banter back and forth that is just delicious to read. Fast forward, we get to a point that Rhysand is hurt, and of course, who does Feyre go to? The only person that she can, the Suriel. We go back to the Suriel and we learn this breathtaking information that pisses Feyre off. So much to the point that after she saves Rhysand's life, she runs away. She has Mor take her to this secluded cabin.
Receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots. fucking everything.
And she stays there. I can't remember if it was like a week or 2 weeks. It was for a hot minute. And Feyre's just painting all over this person's cabin who she has no idea. Like, Feyre, I know that you're supposed to be back into painting. I know this is part of the plot. And not that they really mind it all. But why would you paint a stranger's place? That part just gets me every time. I love what she painted. But you're in a stranger's cabin. I digress. Her and Mor end up having a moment. Her and Rhysand end up having a moment. And then we get to the nitty-gritty of the plot that we've been waiting for, and it doesn't go well. But then it does go well. And then they have an advantage. And the biggest twist at the end of the book that really got me, I don't want to say got me emotionally, but I could see it coming, but I didn't see it coming. And then we have Nesta and Elaine hide into the cauldron. That was hard for Feyre to watch. We all know it. It was so hard for Feyre to watch. And then the King of Hybern breaks the bond. And when Mor is yelling at Rhysand to go get Feyre, he's like, no, we now have an in into the Spring Court. We have a mole in the Spring Court who can feed us all the information. Which leads us to the next book, which I will be reading at some point in time. I'm saving it for a spring book because we're going to be back in the Spring Court. So plot for this book, I would rate it, if we're rating 5s, if we're going to give 5 stars, I'm rating it a 3.5 to a 4 out of 5 because I honestly thought that the plot and the subplots following through were actually pretty good. I liked where this was going. And I like how it ended, how I was not expecting it to end. Character development. I'm definitely rating that one a 4.5 out of 5 because there is major character development for a good majority of our characters. And I know that there's going to be more development in the later books, so I don't want to save like a 5 out of 5, but a 4 to a 4.5 out of 5, I think that's pretty fair. And we also have characters who seem to be getting worse, which is also a really good tie-in to offset the other character growth. Spice level. It's better than the first book, but I'm still gonna have to have it at like a 2.5, maybe a 3. Heavy on the 2.5 out of 5 of Spice. And just over general writing, the writing's not bad. It's not the best I've ever read, but I do like the way that the story progresses. I think the timeline makes sense. And it's pretty easy to follow along. I enjoy reading it, so a 4 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. I can't say that it wasn't good, because clearly there was a lot that I was interested in that I decided was worth going back over. But I'm a sucker for wanting to know, even if I don't thoroughly enjoy the series, I'm a sucker to know how it ends. And I want to see how Feyre's powers progress more into the next book. I want to see how she's able to not infiltrate the Spring Court, but how she's able to keep up this facade, because already Foxboy, he knows something's up. He knows. Now I want to get into things that I would change, maybe not like so much. I know we're just at the beginning. We're just passing the precipice of Feyre's powers, but I do wish that we got to see more of her magic. We got to see more of her power, because Amren is the one who ends up saving her at one point in time using her powerful magic. And that's another point I want to state. That is another point that I want to take a look at. Amren is supposed to be this like super powerful, out of this reality being. She's from a whole nother dimension, a whole nother reality. And yet when there was an attack on Valaris, she did a lot, but she didn't do near as much as I expected her to be. She's supposed to be like this total destructive power. And I feel like she could have wiped the freaking floor with half of what attacked. Personally, I also think that Feyre did a pretty good job, but I wish we got to see more of her power than just some of it. We got like this minuscule fraction, so I hope we get to see her use more in the next book. And the spice that we got was good because there are still feelings developing and releasing and showing, and there has to be tension. And it makes it really hit home with Rhysand later on when he admits everything. But God, I wish there was more. I feel like at some points there could have been more. And I'm really hoping that we get to see some moments between our new pairs of possible mates. That would be nice. I also don't like, I understand it. As a mom, you want your kid to have the best partner. You want your kid to have someone who cares enough about them to do this. But to have Feyre go get her own engagement ring? And I understand we needed it so that she could remember how powerful she is, that she is this incredible power, and she needed this confidence boost in herself. But really? Her own ring? Rude. But those are my personal thoughts. That has been the book review. If you want to know more, please let me know in the comments down below. If I didn't touch on everything that you were curious about, please also let me know in the comments down below, and I might be able to do a follow-up video. Now, keep in mind, once I've read the entire series, I do want to go into a deep dive video, but I'm also going to have to read all the other Sarah J. Maas books because they're so intertwined and interconnected. It might only make sense to read the rest of the books to do a deep dive into this multiverse of a story. But at the end of reading all of the books so far that we have, because I know that there's more coming along, Sarah J. Maas, that I will be going over the series once I've read them all. That being said, if there's anything that you disagree with or totally agree with, please let me know. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Do you think the rating on the book is justified? Would you have rated it differently? So read the damn book. A Court of Mist and Fury. I thought it was pretty good. Not the best, still pretty up there, I would say. Interesting characters. Oh, actually, one more thing that I wish for this book was a little different is how magic is described in this book. We get to see a pinch of how magic is described for Feyre when she's using it. And in these moments of need, it just sort of happens. And Rhysand is able to explain it a little bit on the shadowy side to where his mind can infiltrate others, and we learn that a certain character also has the same power. I just wish that we got a more in-depth view of magic building, how she's using her magic, what it feels like to use her magic, and not just feel attached to the people she's using her magic from. I don't know. For a fantasy fae book, I feel like we're getting the fantasy part, but I want more in depth of the fantasy part. But thank you guys so much for staying, so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great, amazing rest of your day, week, night, whenever you are seeing this. Thank you so much for existing, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Psh.